As I said before the break, this is about powering progress, and not just progress with electric vehicles. This is about powering progress with people busy right now with land, sea, and air. Yes, we will have electric aeroplanes. Yes, we will, or we do have electric boats. And how that comes about, where that comes about, how it works technically, how it works commercially, and how it's going to work strategically, I think is very, very interesting. So I don't get the chance to talk to everybody, so I'm very jealous of our moderator, Christopher Decker, who's a partner at Oliver Wyman, because it will be his panel and his opportunity to talk about this wonderful subject, powering progress, the role of electrification, land, sea, and air. So would you please welcome to the stage with me, please, Christopher Decker. Thank you. Big round of applause, thank you. I'm a bit jealous, Christopher. Good luck. Enjoy the panel. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining. And like you said, this is going to be a great discussion here. And the panel today, I'd like to run it a little bit more like a fireside chat than a panel itself. I'll be addressing some questions to each of the panelists, but you know, any of the panelists that would like to join in on an answer, please feel free to do so. So I'd like to ask the panelists to join me up here, and then we'll go ahead and introduce ourselves.
Christopher, could you get the panelists to sit by their photographs as well, if possible, please?
Yes, that would be great. If you could.
Thank you.
Very good. Very good. So, like I said, Christopher Decker, I'm a partner with Oliver Wyman. I'm a little bit of, I'm envious of the panel here and looking to gain knowledge just like you in the audience today. I come from a little bit of the electrification side, so I work on the infrastructure. So I'm a strategy consultant for utilities and climate and sustainability. But today we're going to take a deep dive into the vehicles and what infrastructure may be needed to support those vehicles. And first to my left here is Barbara Lebar from Manta Aircraft. She's leading the work in the Middle East here. Barbara, would you like to introduce yourself?
Pleasure. So Barbara, Manta Aircraft, who is Manta, is a vertical and short takeoff and landing hybrid electric platform. So we hear a lot about the batteries. We are the hybrid version. And as you mentioned, Middle East area, we just moved the company last month to Abu Dhabi. So it's based here, everything from the development to manufacturing to commercialization globally. We are not yet there, so we are still in development phase. But the ecosystem here, we find it the best one, the right one to start the business.
Very good. Thank you, Barbara. Next is Omran Malek from ADIO, where he heads smart and autonomous vehicle industry, SAVI unit.
Thank you. So Omran Malek, as you said, from the Abu Dhabi Investment Office. I lead the smart autonomous vehicle industry and looking after land, sea, air domains in terms of mobility and autonomy. And recently I have robotics in my mandate as well, so it keeps expanding.
Very good. Very good. And next to him is Bjørn Utgård, the CEO for ESSMarine. Bjørn?
Thank you for the invitation. It's great to be here. Great to see familiar faces. I'm CEO of ESSMarine. We're engaged in zero-emission electric vessels. We work with the shorter ranges, so basically up to 75 nautical miles, all electric. working with crew transfer, working with ferries, working with pilot vessels. I'm from Norway. Our company is based here in Masdar, and I've been engaged in electric mobility since about 2008. Worked at the Bellona Foundation in Norway, driving very early electric cars back then. I've been working in the maritime domain since 2021 on electric and autonomous vessels. Yeah, I'm excited to be here on the panel. There are some similarities between the maritime domain and vehicles, cars, and there are some big differences. And that's what I'm looking forward to exploring in this panel.
Very good. And last is Georgy Egorov, CFO for ZeroAvia.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me, Christopher. So I'm CFO of ZeroAvia. We are one of the clean aviation leaders. Started only 7 years ago, but I think achieved pretty a lot since then. So our initial product is the powertrain or engine in the more simple terms for existing aircrafts. It's a hydrogen electric engine, i.e. the one which doesn't emit CO2. So ultimately you store hydrogen on board, and ultimately through the catalytic reaction through fuel cells, it powers the aircraft. But with the time we became much more than that. So right now we focus not only on hydrogen electric aviation, but we started supplying component parts for the, for example, for players like hybrid electric or battery electric. So we sell motors themselves, power generation system, started working some of the defense applications, and overall became much more than that. So more importantly, we're not just a prototype. We flew 2 years ago our first plane, our first enabled aircraft. It's a 20-seater, which can fly up to 400 kilometers. So it's there, so it's in certification. We're planning to certify our first engine by the end of 26 and enter commercial operations thereafter. So very exciting times.
Thank you, Georgy. So as you see here, we've got spread out between land, air, and sea, and we're going to talk a little bit about the opportunities, the challenges in these sectors over this fireside chat. And I think each panelist up here will give their own views on the opportunities and challenges in their specific sector. But I think they also can relate those to each other's sector. So this is what we'd like to achieve here today. To set the stage for that, I want to go to each one of the panelists now and ask them, this is a fast-moving topic. What do you see in the next 5 years? I think that's a good horizon for today. What do you see happening in the next 5 years, and how is the journey of this technology going to unfold in those 5 years? Can we start with you, Barbara?
Happily. So if we think about the air mobility, advanced air mobility, what we saw in the last years was first the hype of the high-performance promises, which gradually went back with the development. Then we saw the huge orders, which are mainly on the paper, and then was the hype of the partnerships. But what we can expect in the future, in the next 3 to 5 years, it's probably really going down to the ground to see the reality. We do expect some consolidation or changes in the technology itself. We saw that the main leaders like Joby and Archer, they started to divert from only batteries to Joby after they acquired the H2Fly, the hydrogen company. They're exploring that area. I think Archer recently signed also agreement for the defense operations to go hybrid with most probably with the turbines, we'll see. Since Manta started as hybrid from the beginning, we were seen a bit like the black sheeps because we were totally different from majority. But we do see these trends now that the batteries at the moment doesn't provide enough energy density. So that's why we are exploring the alternatives, which could be the hybrid propulsion system. On certification, probably Omran will share much more, but it's the area which is not yet clarified. So we will definitely see the development and the clearer requirements in this area. And then the performance itself, so whatever is promised in how far it's really delivered, so that different providers will probably cater to different missions, the most suitable ones. And we will also see what's, at the end, the business viability, it's important. It's not only that it's a great technology, but if it's too expensive, it's a question, who is going to use it? And if we even take the example of tourist purpose flights like Dubai, Abu Dhabi, it's probably Dubai in general already is catering, it's using the helicopters for that purpose, which would be logically to adopt or complement with the electrified vertical vehicles, air vehicles. But Abu Dhabi, it's more a question, is it going to work in the same way? Or we would need to look at the wider range than not only the urban mobility. So it's viability on technology side, but also the business side. At the end, if it's affordable, people will use it. If it's not, it's just a fraction that can utilize it, and then it's a question how many providers can live with that. So it's definitely on both sides. And maybe the last point would be also, we will see how the insurance companies are going to respond, because that's a new technology. And yes, insurance is available for the aviation, but for the new technology, normally what happens, if the risk is higher, then the rates are going to be higher as well. So we will need to somehow adopt this higher cost of the insurance as well, and higher risk, higher cost, then at the end we will need to see how to make it affordable for the end users, either companies or the individuals. That's what we predict in the next 3 to 5 years.
Very good. And next, let's go to Omran and look at, how can we enable that next 5 years and create an environment where these technologies can thrive and get to where they want to go in 5 years.
So I spent the last 3 years in my previous job enabling the advanced air mobility sector. And now I'm honored to be in ADIO leading the SAVI cluster, where it's land, sea, and air. So the scope is bigger. Of course, what I see, if it is with a vision, with a twist of reality, that you will have definitely logistics cars in autonomous mode around the city of Abu Dhabi. You will have autonomous cars without a safety driver in dedicated zones. In terms of the air, you will have the air taxi through our partnership with Archer and hopefully Manta, as we work closely with them over the network that is soon going to be announced. By the way, for Abu Dhabi, we're not announcing 1 or 2 landing or what we call vertiports. It's going to be a network covering the city of Abu Dhabi. And then these vertiports are going to be where multimodal transport is, where the other buses with our partners in Abu Dhabi Mobility, where the Ittihad Rail is going to be, where the touristic destinations are going to be. So there are multi-use cases, as Barbara mentioned. On the air side as well, there are many use cases. One of them is my colleague here, Bjørn, on the, well, I'll not disclose this secret. So it's on the, let's call it, how do you transport from onshore to offshore? And how do you, let's say, over the 5 years with the increase in population, You know, Abu Dhabi city, I love it. I come from Dubai. Dubai is so heavy in traffic. Here is no traffic, but the traffic is going to increase. You know, and with the Talabat and Kareem drivers buzzing around. So how do we reduce that with the volume of air that is free on top of us with drones, but also keeping it safe, given what we know about drones? On the seaside, it is an untapped market. I'm very happy that I met Bjørn, and they're doing great things, and I think we'll explore more things to do. Abu Dhabi is a cluster of islands where, and as well, we are a coastal country. So we have Regent as a project which will be deployed in the next 5 years between, you know, reducing the traffic between Abu Dhabi and the Northern Emirates and the Western region as well. And there is also the touristic element between the islands and moving between the islands. So the other element that has been added recently to my scope is robotics. Now there is a new hype with robotics. There is a humanoid standing out there. He's sitting quietly. We hope they don't turn into Terminators, but so I think the progression of that is going to take time. Like, there are robotics in the factories for many decades, as we know. But the robotics that we envision them, like the movie we saw in Will Smith, the iRobot, and what it did is a bit maybe in the distant future. I could be wrong. But because you need large data sets of AI enabled to be capturing in order for them to learn. So that will need a bit of time for me to have a humanoid robot at home when I'm lonely, or say, you know, want to chat with. Or maybe in the first years it will be deployed in the factories, but it's going to be a phased, gradual step that we see. That's what I see the 5 years coming in.
Very good. Interesting. So you mentioned as well kind of transportation between all of these islands and even man-made islands. We've got a number of rigs out in the sea as well. How do you see that transportation going, Bjørn, and the technology there in the next 5 years?
It's fascinating. I think one of the first things you experience when you get to the UAE and you get to the cities here, you realize that water is everywhere. And it makes a lot of sense because water has a cooling effect on the environment, right? And with the temperatures around here, that's important. And when you look at the map of Abu Dhabi, you can knock yourself out for hours on Google Earth looking at how far is that, how long would that take? And we've certainly spent a lot of time doing that. I think that the people transport is definitely an interesting segment. But I don't think it's necessarily the first segment that will take off. And the reason for that is just looking at what happened in my own country, in Norway, where the first vessels, I mean, did you know that 80% of the road ferries in Norway are now all electric? And that was because it was a governmental contract where they put a requirement they had to be zero emission. And then the operators had to find out, how do we offer this? And they are running between two spaces. There's no random charging going on there. It's not like, will they come to charge? We wonder, things like that with the public for private drivers. No, because you know the vessel is going between those 2 points, right? And that is certainly the truth also for public transit. What my reservations about public transit as a launch market is that it tends to be underfunded. Certainly after the pandemic, you saw that the transit bodies struggled to get funding for it. If you look at the ferry or the public transit operator in Oslo, they spend 4 or 5 times as much per passenger on ferries as they spend on buses. So those organizations, when they look at how should I spend my funds, they end up with this: I could get 5 passengers on a bus or 1 passenger on a ferry. I tend to prioritize it. Now, I'm not saying that's always the case necessarily, but if it's basic economics like that, then I don't think it's the most attractive short-term segment. I definitely see it's happening, and it's a market we're definitely addressing as well. What I see as more attractive short-term markets is workboats that are doing the same thing every day, where it's not a question about the revenue, because the revenue is fixed in the day rate. So it's a much easier calculation to make. I know exactly how much fuel it uses per year, the existing vessel, and we have opportunities to provide 100% electric vessels for operation today. So that's what's happened in Norway is that the first electric ferry came in 2014. Then you see more and more, and now it's really startling if you go on a road trip and you're on a ferry and you park your car on the ferry and you're like, why is it so quiet? It's because it's electric. It doesn't say that it's electric anywhere. It's classic Norwegian. We just do stuff, and then doesn't all the world do this? But then what you've seen is the workboats in the aquaculture. They started using hybrid because they needed to steam out, and then they have long hotel operations and just staying put. Perfect for hybrid operations. Now you've seen the first speed ferries also in operation, where they're learning, actually, if we just put batteries on a vessel, it's going to weigh a lot more. And unlike a car, if you weigh a car more down, basically what happens is you increase the friction a little bit, and you increase the work that it needs to carry out when it's going uphill, but 80% of that you regenerate when you go downhill. So it's not necessarily such an issue. If you weigh down a vessel, what happens is that you're going to plow away more water. Every extra kilo removes more water, so you have to do something with the hull technology if you're going to do it. Generally speaking, we've talked about this in the car industry, right? Do you build a purpose-built platform for EV, or do you just rebuild one? I think if you drive the BMWs, like a BMW i5, for example, or i7, I think it's hard to say that that's not a good EV. The platform wasn't built to be electric, but it's a really good EV, right? Whereas if you do this with electric vessels, you are going to have a very subpar experience, because the vessel is going to have much more resistance. The energy consumption doesn't go down, it goes up, right? So you need to do something with the hull to reduce drag. And so that's why, in many ways, sure, electric cars had needed to be much more redesigned. There's a lot of innovation gone in there, but with vessels, you have to rethink the whole hull situation. What are you going to do to reduce drag? And then there's different things that we know to be working. You have a fully foiling that looks amazing. I think you've all seen them on LinkedIn, the pictures of a fully foiling vessel that's completely out of the water, and it looks like, wow, how's that even possible, right? It's a great sunny day, flat water picture. Question is, how does it operate in 2-meter waves? How robust it is? And also keep in mind, how will it operate when you have a random captain from an operator who's assigned to run this vessel on any given day? It's not necessarily an industry that is directly conducive for a very, very advanced system like that. You could do a SES ship where you basically inject air underneath and you create like a cushion that lifts the whole hull. That's also a proven solution out there. You put a fan, you lift the boat and you reduce the drag. But then you have this electric motor and a fan that is making noise. That is, and is also another single point of failure. So what we've chosen to do is to go with a foil assist solution, where we have a catamaran hull that lifts itself when it's going slowly and then gets assistance from a foil system when it's going at higher speeds. It's completely you don't need to have a fancy regulation of sensors and detecting exactly the height you're at. It's a more, I would say it's a more suitable technology for more traditional naval operations, and that allows us to reduce drag by 50% or reduce energy consumption by 50%. And the beauty of that then is that you can run it on diesel, you can run it biodiesel, or you can run it on electric, and it's kind of more of a gradual transfer. But coming back to where it's going, the nice thing is that you can find some niches. You don't have to build 20,000 of a series to make it viable. You can build 5, you can build 2, and it can be economically viable. So in some ways, it's a bit easier in that industry. However, there's a lot of things that have to fit together. How does the battery speak with the electric conversion system? Is there electromagnetic noise? How does the CAN bus behave? And then you're going to get a shipyard that's used to cutting metal and welding. You go get them to do that. So that's where we see also opportunities to essentially recreate those value chains, that the borders of who does what can somehow be evolving. And that, of course, creates a lot of opportunity for partnerships. And that's also why we're here, because we see that we have the advantage of being from Norway, having more than 10 years of experience of electrification in the maritime domain. But we don't know, you can't just build something in Norway and believe that it's going to fit here. You have to have a true partnership, and that's why we are a Norwegian and Emirati company.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bjørn. Now, Georgy, how about from another aviation perspective, what do you see in the next 5 years?
Sure, I think it's relatively easy for us. So it's pretty straightforward. It's a commercial launch of operations, because there's a lot of promise. So, and we've seen it, as Barbara already mentioned, in many, many other companies. But there's no clean aviation company which operates in commercial terms, no commercial flights, or cargo flights. So what we at least put in front of ourselves is to start commercial operations within the next 2 years. We're about to announce a global launch customer, which actually will be cargo operations with one of the largest cargo operators. And actually Norway will hopefully be the second launch customer. So obviously, it's great that in Scandinavia and Nordics, there's a great push for decarbonization. So for us, it's #1 target. Now, I think on the flip side, I think we're going to see a lot of companies getting out of business, because I think there were lots of prototypes which were funded when the money was easy, money was in abundance, but literally did not have a concept or commercial concept. So they were solving the problems which didn't exist or creating some new modality. And then again, Barbara already helpfully mentioned this, urban mobility, some of the just companies, obviously not going to mention. And I think this will be a negative feedback for all of us. So it's kind of next 5 years, I see from one side, extremely, extremely exciting times for the commercial operations. And hopefully UAE will be also one of the countries which will be one of the first to launch operations for the clean aviation on a commercial basis. But also I think there will be a survival of fittest, so to say, time.
Yeah. Very good. I mean, with all the focus in the last however many years on lightweighting in aviation, and now you're adding weight as a battery or a fuel cell or things like that. What is the focus there on that sort of how do you take the knowledge from the lightweighting of the last 30 years and apply it to now what is a transitioning market?
Sure. So I think if we're going to take the broader market, so I think, let's say, for example, automotive industry, right? So I think that's a great example of adoption. Now, I think there are 3 lessons pretty much. So first of all, it's time, it's a gradual process, and ultimately externality. And I will explain what. So I think a lot of people talk about Tesla, but people keep forgetting that actually before Tesla, the EV market started in the 90s. Actually, in fact, GM was one of the first one, and you're from Detroit, so I guess so you're familiar with some of it, and people conveniently forgot about this. So ultimately, it took 30 years for us to get to the point when no one doubts that EV, electric, cars, electric vehicles are here to stay, and it's just a matter of time when internal combustion engines will be phased out. So that's #1. So a lot of people expect, how it will be achieved, For example, a lot of skeptics come to us, so when I speak at different conferences or meet with investors, and their question is, but what are you solving? You're only flying for 400 kilometers. My response is, we're only flying for 400 kilometers, but we're going to be the first company in the world, most likely, which will fly the clean flight. Obviously, there are plenty of others, helping it at least from hydrogen electric perspective. So I think there's a lot of, let's say, unhelpful forgetfulness that it takes time. So that's #1. So from one standpoint, and also hopefully we're going to condense the 30 years which took automotive industry in something shorter. So we'll see, and then there are many factors playing a positive impact. Then gradually, so I don't think the investors or regulators or customers should be expecting to fly on hydrogen electric or battery electric for 1,000 kilometers right away. I think it will take time. And the third one, I think it's externality. So we have great examples of leadership like Airbus, who, despite all odds, they keep saying that they're going to push for the hydrogen electric aviation. And then even last week, so they came out with a statement saying, well, it's been delayed, but ultimately that's their preferred route to decarbonize aviation. But let's not count on incumbents. I think the innovation will come from smaller companies, from disruptors, and these disruptors will need help.
That's great.
Christopher, if I may, I think this is interesting at 30 years. There's very, very few investors that have a 30-year horizon, right? So I think the challenge is to find what are these earliest, what are the lowest, absolute lowest hanging fruits where we can start to generate revenue, start to generate profits. I'm curious what you think about it.
Bjørn, you're spot on, of course. No, so no one knows who's going to be right. Yeah, so it's always, obviously, it's always easy to be smart with the hindsight. But we at least take an approach saying we need to launch something to generate revenue, to show to investors that actually you can generate profit. By the way, we're not talking about any green premium. We're talking about commercially viable flights, albeit at a shorter distance, but still commercially viable, and hopefully can substitute, FedExes and DHLs and Amazon Air flying daily thousands of flights and delivering the parcels, so from combustion engines into the hydrogen electric or battery electric. You're absolutely right. So we put now in front of ourselves a target. We need to prove to others that you can make money on this as well, and obviously create good.
Good, and hopefully we can utilize the knowledge gained from the car sector, right, to shorten that 30 years, right? That's the idea, at least, right?
It is interesting. So ultimately, I guess technological challenges will be one of the most important challenges. Yeah. So let's not forget, if we talk about aviation, so that overall, anytime we're board on a plane, and Omran will not let me lie, but that's overall, it's a technology from 1960s. So 747 was conceived, if you want, in 1960s. Yeah, so it's pretty much okay. The efficiency of the turbines has been perfected and improved, but the perfection actually, we only talk about single percentage points. Yeah. So the technological advancement, I think this will be the most difficult. So for example, in our case, and I guess also in the case of Barbara, is, okay, we can see the pathway to fly 1,000 nautical miles, 1,800 kilometers within 4 or 5 years. Now, what's the pathway to, 3,000 kilometers, 5,000 kilometers, to substitute the workhorse, the narrow bodies? I think for that, ultimately, we will need the clean sheet design of aircraft. When automotive industry didn't go through that. So, because ultimately, you're not solving for weight and range. So, and I guess eVTOLs will have exactly the same problems, i.e. how to solve the increase of the range and then do the step change. So technological challenges, I think, will remain. But again, automotive industry had 30 years, so we're already achieving much more in 5 or 7.
I think one thing is, I worked in the EV charging before. We did a lot of work with the big truck makers. We had partnership with Scania, with Daimler across Europe, selected us. And the interesting thing is that there's a tendency, I think, in the popular, for people just thinking tangentially about electrification. They think, oh, but what about the long distance truck? Or what about when I drive to visit my family other parts of Europe, other part of Europe? Yeah, and the answer to that is, yeah, what about that? You don't have to have a solution for 100%. In fact, if you set that as a benchmark, albeit just because you didn't really think about it, the problem is that you throw a lot of good applications out that you write off. Oh, you can't fly 3,000 kilometers, you don't have a solution. BS, right? There's a lot of opportunities. I'm from the islands up of Norway. In Norway, we have airports. Any island with more than 5,000 people, there's an airport. And it's because it's flying very short distances. And it's the same thing with us. There's no way that we could have been here where we are with our business if it hadn't been for those electric ferries that started operating, if it hadn't been for the hybrid drivetrains that made sense in the aquaculture industry. It starts somewhere, and then based on that learning, you go to the next step. This is why EVs won and hydrogen cars will never be the car of the future. Because it was a viable business case for someone in 2005 or 2010. For some people, it made sense to get an EV then, even if you had to pay $60,000 and the alternative was $20,000, because you were driving so much. There's certain applications. And so I think that's an important thing as we think how this will play out. Find the niches, find the low-hanging fruits, double down on that. Don't talk about electrifying everything, or don't talk about the whole, this is a revolution, all the planes will be electric. That's a distraction. Focus on those applications where you have a Goldilocks opportunity, where the decision-making process is something you can gain control over, where the funding is clear because the business case makes sense. In our case, the vessels we will be deploying here next year, saving $500,000 each a year for the operator. It's a no-brainer. And that's, yeah, so that's my 5 cents on this transition space. And I think you're on track to finding those lower-hanging fruits.
Yeah, I think we need to remember, you know, in the early days of aviation, it took 15 or 20 stops to get from one side of Europe to the other, right? You know, that we may be, you know, cutting that a bit, but this is where we started off in aviation anyway. Mm-hmm. Very good. Next one is for Omran. I think we hear about Abu Dhabi, you know, serving as the test bed for future mobility. How are you leveraging this perspective to accelerate deployment of electrified and autonomous vehicles?
So SAVI, in collaboration with the government and private partners in the system, work, you know, we are at a, I can reach, or they can reach me at a WhatsApp level. Well, I say, there is a company, let's enable them to do some testing here. The regulators are forward-leaning. They're willing to sit with the industry, because autonomy is, whether it's land, sea, or air, it's something new for the regulators. It's new for all of us. So how do we allow it progressively and in a phased way, as Bjørn just say, let's not go full scale out of utopian world where everything is autonomous, you know, that's unbelievable. But let's go step by step. And this is the phased approach that the regulators and the investors and the whole ecosystem is working collaboratively toward. Like, we have a set deadline, we have set milestones that we want to achieve. We have the direction set by the leadership that by 2027, Abu Dhabi to be a native AI digital emirate. So we have clear roadmap ahead, and we are, let's say, in an execution mode, and that's the way we work. And Abu Dhabi, as I enter this new role, I've noticed there are few cities around the world that, you know, the autonomous companies are looking to go and, you know, try their products or commercialize their products. And we're very honored that through this ecosystem that has been set by my peers in the ecosystem, that we're one of them.
Very good. Barbara, I think you talked a lot about the safety earlier and how it's going to be viewed by the public. How do you see public acceptance and integration of air mobility into urban and regional transport networks? And how do you see that evolving, especially here in UAE? I think, as Omran said, this is going to be a test bed, and you're going to move gradually. But how do you see that acceptance or public acceptance going?
That's a very, very important point, definitely, because if people don't use it, then you can close the shop, right? Yeah. We see a huge difference between, let's say, Europe, US, and this region. Why? Because the trust in, Omran, what you mentioned before, the vision is set, the leadership, the government set the vision, and it's the execution which is actually struggling to keep the pace with the leadership who set the vision. And this also brings a very high trust among the people, the society, because we experience on every step that whatever is set, it happens. and it's taken care of everything. While I think EASA did a few years back a review on acceptance of the urban air mobility, or in general advanced air mobility among European countries. And the result was, in general, was very open, was positive to the change, to the new technology, but was very interesting to see that the major concerns were the safety, because the government, here the government is working closely with the regulatory body, aviation regulation as well. While in Europe we have EASA, or in US FAA, which is legacy aviation authority, but every and each government is separate, so it's not really connected. That's why the fear, is it really going to be safe? Is it going to fall on my house, in my garden? Is it going to kill people on the floor? It's on the ground. Of course, it's normal that the fear is there. The second one was the noise, so the pollution of what's going to be if there will be all those vehicles flying above us, not only on the road, but above us as well, and the privacy as well. So the fear is coming from the area that governments and regulation authorities are not really working so close together as we see here. That's why the UAE and maybe wider Middle East region, because of the high trust in the government decisions, in the vision set, definitely allows and helps to move forward and to bring new technologies. And what Georgy mentioned before, it's not the big players bringing new technologies, it's actually the small ones, the small players who bet everything on the new technology, but they cannot do it by themselves. So the very strong ecosystem around, the support from the government and from all the players, it's crucial to actually do the step further. And it's what we believe it's really a strong collaboration, not to do the full vertical development by ourselves, but to collaborate with those who are experts in the propulsion system, to take the things which are developed on board, which will at the end show that the vehicle works, that really flies, that it's safe, because it's always two things. First is to start, but then we need to prove that this is actually safe. And that not only safe, that let's be fair, it's not a big question of is it safe or not, because advanced air mobility brings a new level of redundancy, safety redundancy. If we just think like conventional airplanes, what we see normally, 1, 2, sometimes 3 engines. What we see in the advanced air mobility are multiple electric motors, so there are many. That means redundancy is there. It's not a fear of is it going to work or not, but it's the most optimized way. Because it's new technology, it's always more expensive. It needs to be done on the edge. If we work on the edge, then also the business viability can be provided. But this UAE as the first one, that's why we say it's maybe not among the first adopters, but will probably be the first adopters, mainly because of the big trust and the leadership which is seen through the government, the vision set, and everyone around working toward the same vision, which gives us end users the trust that is something which is normal that we adapt. And if we just look at the general mindset of the people here or somewhere else, it's future-oriented, it's innovation-oriented, and we are ready to try out new things and adopt new things because we have a great example in the leadership here.
Very good, that's true. And let's move from the UAE now to Norway. That's widely recognized as a leader in electrification of transport. And your home country, Bjørn, what opportunities do you see taking the learnings from there and applying them here, especially in the logistics and shipping sector?
Yeah, so maybe I can first just comment on cars. I think it's one thing that's important to know in Norway is that normal cars are taxed very highly. And so that's a bit of a dilemma because here cars are not taxed at all, I think, or very, very barely, right? And if you're a company, you even get in-country value if you buy a car. And so there's even incentives to buy cars. Whereas in Norway, when you had environmental taxes on cars and EVs didn't have them, you had a very strong economic benefit, and that made it cheaper for people to buy an electric car. And if you're wondering what drives consumer behavior with cars, look at the purse, and then look at the purse, and then you can look at status and all the rest of it. But the economics is important. So I think that's number one thing if we want to drive the deployment of electric vehicles, looking at the comparative economics is important. And the same thing with gasoline, also heavily taxed in Norway, of course. So that, I think, created kind of an unfair advantage for us in a weird way. That said, if you look at the vehicles that are parked out on the showroom and you look at what's available in electric vehicles and you look at actually the costs and the price tags, you're starting to realize that actually it can make sense economically even without those tax incentives now. So I think that's why it's an exciting period. You see the number of vehicles, I don't know what the number is, but I would guess that more than 40 different models are on offer here in the UAE right now. Then I think the charging infrastructure is a big topic. I was enjoying an electric taxi ride over in Dubai a couple of days ago, and the driver said this. We asked, how do you like driving an electric taxi? And he said, oh, I hate it. And he said, why? Oh, I can't charge at the mall anymore. I now have to drive down halfway to Abu Dhabi to go to the Tesla supercharger to get charged. So you can tell that solving the infrastructure play, having worked in infrastructure play as well, and Christopher, you work with utilities, what I have seen in Norway and I've seen in other countries, and unfortunately here as well, is that there are some utilities that are refusing to get out of the way and let people invest in infrastructure as a commercial business. And that unfortunately means that taxi drivers cannot do it. I think those things are super important if we want to if we want to make it easier for those obvious things. If you're driving a taxi in Dubai or in Abu Dhabi, obviously it should be electric because you do a lot of mileage, you would save a lot of money, but then you need to be able to charge. So that's the first thing. Now, going over to the to electrifying other things, if you're in Oslo now and you walk by a construction site, it is very quiet. And why is it quiet? Because those excavators and trucks are all electric machines. How did that happen? Well, the city said we want to have zero-emission construction sites. And back in 2018, when they started this, the construction business is like, but what vehicles are we going to run, right? It turned out that, and you had a lot of offerings in place. And now it's fairly easy to get hold of electric excavators. It's a regulated business. The city started saying you have to have zero-emission construction sites. And you can set targets over time. It's simple tricks that doesn't skewer the competition in one direction or the other. It just sets the rules, right? And then the business, they know how to find solutions. If you look at all the solutions on the showroom, there are solutions if there's an incentive to look. And then when it comes to the vessel side, and buses, all the buses in Oslo now are all electric. Same way, public tender, if you want to play, you have to have zero emissions. If you want to run it on hydrogen, you can, but then you have to pay for the fuel yourself. Right? And so they all went electric. And this is exactly what's played out with the electric vessels as well. It's by public tenders, by setting, we are buying services for the people and for the government. And basically saying, there's no reason we shouldn't be buying electric now. That is an amazing, the government as a customer is an amazing power that doesn't have to set rules for others. We are choosing how to spend the public purse. If we want to have zero emissions, we have to start with ourselves. So those are some lessons that, and it's really startling. I look back at pictures of myself from 10 years ago, and you know, I was taking pictures of all these chargers in Oslo that I was starting to spring up, but the car sales was like maybe 1% of sales, and now it's in April it was in March it was 98% was all electric sales of cars. All the car ferries almost are already electric, and you're seeing that's happening for others as well. So the transition can happen really fast, but all throughout. Incentives is one thing, but government is a buyer, super powerful tool. You should be wielding it.
Good. Let's stay in that vein, the partnership between government and the customers. And Georgy, given the scale of the change that is needed, we're going to need to have partnerships. And what partnerships are proving most effective in your view?
No, it's a very interesting question, and I like obviously the parallels again with the automotive industry, but over here I think it's a massive divergence because, like for example, when Tesla started the mobility chargers, so there were just a few installed in urban areas, and overall the level of investment wasn't significant in a bigger scale of things. Over here we're talking about changing infrastructure in commercial airports. Yeah, and let's also remind ourselves that ultimately the airports have been in operation, or at least a lot of them in the aviation industry as there is, existed for 100 years. So amount of money or capital invested in airport infrastructure, I'm sure it's in trillions of dollars if you adjust for inflation. So we're talking about huge sums. So now, on the other side, you've got, there's plenty of private capital and a lot of infrastructure funds approaches and say, we would love to own your infrastructure, we'd love to own your refuelers, we'd love to own your electrolyzers, but the problem is not all of them asking for the same thing. It's the end of certification and entry into service. And we're getting into proverbial chicken and egg situation. You can't enter into service if you don't have the existing infrastructure, or if you don't build the infrastructure for that. And I think that's where ultimately the governments and large corporations will have to step in at the end of the day. So someone have to be pioneer. The EU has been absolutely amazing with this. And it's great to see them. So, for example, there are two big funds, and we're beneficiaries of those two big initiatives. One, for example, it's Horizons Europe, which ultimately funds the R&D in transportation and logistics space across Europe. So, for example, one of the examples is we're in a partnership, if you want, with Aéroport de Paris, the Paris airport, ENGIE, which is obviously one of the largest utilities, ADP from Portugal, another very large utility in us, and we're obviously like one of the smallest consortium members over there. But EU funds 70% of development of refuelers, chargers, and electrolyzers in Airport de Paris to enable the hydrogen aviation, which is amazing. Yeah, so it's 70%. It's a lot. Norway is very similar. And that's, I think, Bjørn already covered that. There's another one called Innovation Fund, which ultimately covers CapEx. And that's what, for example, I mentioned that the second launch customer for us will be Norway, and we are hoping to be the winners of the Innovation Fund. And then EU ultimately will fund up to 70-75% of CapEx. For us, for relatively small players, that's a significant win. IRA, and then also, but it's not just the government money, it's pooling the resources, as I mentioned, because, for example, in the first case, we're going to do it with Aéroport de Paris, we're going to do it with ENGIE, who will commit capital, and they're committing capital at risk. So IRA in the US has been a tremendous help now, and there's so much of negative rap about this, and so especially sometimes with the new government. But overall, people keep forgetting that IRA created lots of jobs and then decreased the price of electricity and decreased the price of hydrogen to the extent that actually hydrogen right now is commercially viable for aviation and other uses in the US, right? In Abu Dhabi, that's been amazing, like what ADIO are doing, Abu Dhabi Aviation, so incentives for the clean aviation companies, so obviously Regent, Archer. I think there's more to be done, but I think it's amazing that the government over here opened the doors into the land and to the using existing facilities, warehouses. A lot will need to be done, but I think that's definitely in the region, I think it's fair to say. Commending you, Omran, and your colleagues, so you're doing some great job. Well, at the end of the day, so what do they say in English? It takes a village to raise a child. So I think the pooling of resources is absolutely inevitable, and government support as well.
Very good. Well, I think the time is winding down, so I don't know. I've learned a lot. I'm sure the audience has learned a lot today. But I think let's go one more round of now. Let's say we can look beyond the 5 years. And really think about kind of wrapping up your view on the technology, but also giving us some milestones to look out for, maybe beyond those 5 years, and what we think this is going to evolve into, these technologies. Barbara, would you like to start?
Beyond 5 years or even more, I would almost say that autonomous will be more important than electrifying, because that will be the biggest change in the way how we behave, how we use the transportation in general. Of course, autonomous depends on the certification, the parts that needs to be done, so that will be the milestone that we need to pass, that autonomy, it's not only to transport goods, but also to transport people, which at the moment is not yet there. I also believe that what was mentioned, Bjørn mentioned a bit before, that the right vehicles will be used for the right missions. So then, when we say electrification or electrifying or electric vehicles, this doesn't mean that sometimes it's a misconception that there must be batteries on board. Doesn't matter. So you have the electric motors, and then it's a powertrain which will generate the electric energy. And what you put here as a powertrain, it depends. Could be the hydrogen on one side, could be batteries, could be the optimized conventional engines as well, like the turbines. And we can almost look at it like with, if we take a parallel with the electric cars. So today we don't complain about the acceleration of electric cars. They're fast and they accelerate. It's an amazing feeling when you step the pedal. But we do complain about the range. And like hybrid propulsion system is using the advantages of both, the strengths of both. So it's using the power that is given by the batteries, and is using the energy, the range, which is provided by the liquid fuels. So it's more to see, yes, going towards sustainability, but using the right setup, the right propulsion systems for the different missions that we are going to serve or to cater. But autonomy, I believe that will be the number one.
Very good. Very good. And from you, Omran?
It's interesting what Bjørn said about how long it took to adopt EV. And with AI, remember maybe ChatGPT 2 years ago? It was like, it's hallucinating, it's not real. Now, how many times do we use AI in our day, you know? Mm-hmm. Probably I've used it for my speech. But then it's accelerating at a pace where, if hypothetically speaking, let's say all the cars, we switch it to AI, so autonomous, are we willing to accept to be in a car that's driving on its own? Let's say it's certified, let's say. So that's a pillar where I think, yes, the digital infrastructure we need to work on, we need to work on the physical infrastructure, but we need to work on the human acceptance of that, you know, which is the knowledge, if it be the regulator, if it be the public acceptance, and not just the public acceptance in terms of, you know, I agree with Barbara said that there is trust in it, but then when you go in full scale, that you're giving the power to, you know, Skynet, is everyone willing to accept it? And we need to, us as, you know, sort of the leaders in this industry, is put an element of our work into educating people that the benefits of it. There are risks to it, but there are the benefits of it as well. So that I see is crucial, as Barbara said. After the 5-year point, AI will be an inevitability. I know Bjørn disagrees, but let's see.
Well, I think that my vision for 5 years from now is that we're all going to look back and we're going to say we are more committed than ever, because we have achieved very meaningful results in the last 5 years, and we have avoided We have avoided falling into the flashy pilot trap of doing something very flashy that doesn't scale. We have avoided doing things just because they're cool and they're the big taglines, the big buzzwords of the day, and we have focused on fundamentals where intervention from government, intervention from capital has helped us to come over those barriers that we have to get across to get to viable business economics, viable use cases. I think electrification is part of that, AI is part of that, autonomous is part of that, but but they are not all, right? At the end of the day, institutions, the belief that if we do this together, we can achieve great things, the belief that this is not just buzzwords that were touted by entrepreneurs that wanted to get rich. Right? This was actually fundamentally viable and sound things that we did. I think that is the number one goal for us in the next 5 years, to keep that faith going, to keep that torch, carrying that torch forward, and keep proving to ourselves that, yes, this was a good decision.
Very good. Georgy, you want to wrap it up?
I'll be very quick. It's very difficult not to repeat what my co-panelists are saying, and definitely have a lot of sympathy to what they're saying. But 5 years, commercial operations for electric aviation, doesn't matter what vector, battery, fuel cell, obviously hope it will be fuel cell, but it doesn't matter. It needs to be there, it needs to be working, so that it needs to be adopted. And further on, I think maybe a little bit narrowed down, it's the transatlantic or London to Abu Dhabi flight on without emitting CO2.
Inshallah.
Very good. I think we have a lot clearer picture now what it could look like in 2030 and beyond. I'd like to thank the panelists up here. It's been very insightful, and I'd like to thank you, the audience, for joining us. And I hope you found something in there that you can take home and help us all learn how to adapt. Right? I think people are a lot more adaptable than we give them credit for, and we'll be talking about this in 2030 and saying it's just like AI. It just came and we did it. So,
great.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much, our panel. If you can show your appreciation, thank you. Stay where you are just for a moment. We're going to ask one quick question if we've got one. Yes, gentleman at the front. Can you make it a brief question, please? Because we're just trying to keep on track.
Thank you. We were in Toulouse in 2021 for the launch of Airbus Hydrogen. Just yesterday, Airbus announced shelving completely the hydrogen strategy. I was in Prescott, Arizona for the aviation Thalys, the first electric planes, and it was shelved. So realistically, what is the number one target achievable in the coming 5 years? Thank you. Achievable.
So it's a question for me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Realistically and pragmatically.
Sure, of course. I can only talk about about our company, and then obviously we've got Omran here, who's from his ex-GACA hat as well. So we've got obviously technological, financial, but we've got certification, regulatory questions as well. So ultimately, our target is to launch our 20-seater in 2 years, and we've got customers for that. Our order book is 2,000 powertrains. Now, technologically it's solved, but we need to get certified, and that's a big question, which unfortunately doesn't depend on us, but it also depends on the regular FAA or CA, and hopefully eventually with GACA over here once we start working here. So that's a realistic target. So it works, it flies. We did 17 flights in Gloucestershire in West England. There's no technology risk, but we need to certify it, and certification takes time. But 2 years, it's our goal for the first commercial flights on a 20-seater hydrogen electric aircraft.